They told us the assignment was routine, a simple systems check on an inactive facility near the Arctic border. No media, no locals, no coordinates on the official record. But the thing about routine missions is, they're never routine when they come wrapped in silence. I still remember that flight. 4 of us, strapped into the belly of a C-130, engines roaring so loud you could feel it in your bones. Outside, nothing but black sky and endless snow below. The navigator had no maps, just a single line of coordinates marked AL-57B. When I asked the pilot what base it was, he just said, "You'll see when you get there." We landed in the middle of nowhere. No runway lights, just a flare burning against the wind. The cold hit harder than anything I'd felt before, like stepping into another planet. The snow swallowed sound. Even the crunch of our boots disappeared in the wind. A jeep met us, painted white, with no markings. The driver never spoke, just handed the captain a sealed envelope, stamped classified, eyes only. That was the first moment I realized we weren't supposed to be there. The drive took nearly an hour. Nothing but darkness, frozen pines, and the occasional glint of metal, old radar dishes half buried in ice. Then, through the fog, the silhouette of a massive structure rose ahead. It wasn't like any base I'd seen before. No flags, no guards. Just one hangar-sized building half buried into the side of a mountain. Steel doors sealed tight, covered in frost thick enough to hide the lettering beneath. We stopped at a checkpoint. A single light flickered overhead. Inside the booth sat an officer. No name tag, no insignia. Eyes hollow like he hadn't slept in days. He scanned our IDs, then handed each of us a badge marked with a red triangle. "Keep those visible," he said, "and stay above ground, unless ordered otherwise." The captain frowned. "Below ground?" The man didn't answer, just buzzed open the gate and turned away. Inside the hangar, the temperature was even colder. Condensation clung to the walls, and every breath turned to mist. The facility looked abandoned, dust, rust, and empty workstations. But the hum of electricity ran somewhere deep beneath the floor. Our comms officer, Ramirez, tapped the metal grating with his boot. "Power's still running, but the grid up top is dead." The captain ordered a sweep. As we moved through the corridors, I noticed something strange. Every hallway angled slightly downward. Not much, just a few degrees, but enough that after 10 minutes, we were deeper than when we started. That's when we found the door. It was hidden behind a rusted supply rack, heavy steel, reinforced with old bolts, and welded shut from our side. Someone had tried to make sure nothing opened it again. A faded stencil above read, "Project Nemo. Access denied." The captain ran a gloved hand across it. "Never heard of this project," he muttered. Ramirez checked the terminal beside the door. Power lines led into it, active, faintly humming. "Sir, this isn't dead tech. Someone's still routing current through here." The captain ordered me to photograph everything. But before I could pull the camera from my pack, the lights flickered. Once, twice. Then all the corridor lamps died, except for the emergency strip glowing under the welded door. We froze. You could hear the ice shifting above us. Then came the sound, low, distant, metallic, like something large moving far below the surface. "Did you hear that?" Ramirez whispered. Nobody answered. The captain called for backup power. Lights came back after a few seconds, but the door was warm now. Frost melting off the metal, dripping down in slow beads. "Sir," I said quietly, "there's heat coming from inside." He didn't reply, just stared at the red warning label near the hinge, half peeled off, but still readable. Do not re-enter without clearance. 1972. We set up temporary quarters in the upper hall that night. The wind howled against the steel walls, and the generator kept cutting out. Somewhere below, that faint humming continued, steady as a heartbeat. Ramirez couldn't sleep. He kept saying he'd picked up shortwave interference, old radio chatter, American and Russian frequencies overlapping. But every time he tried to record it, it vanished. At 0300 hours, the captain received a transmission from command. Short, cold, and direct. Proceed with Section 12 protocol. Break the seal. I looked at him, half expecting him to refuse. He didn't. Instead, he stared at the message for a long moment, then said quietly, "We go underground at first light." No one spoke after that. The hum from beneath the floor grew louder, almost rhythmic, like something down there already knew we were coming. By morning, the snowstorm had swallowed the horizon. Visibility, 0. Radios, static. We assembled at the sealed door with cutting torches and breathing gear. Before we started, the captain turned to us. "Listen up. Whatever's under here hasn't seen daylight in 50 years. You see anything strange? You report it. No hero moves. No talking, unless I say." The moment the torch hit the steel, the air temperature dropped 10 degrees. Steam rose where the welds began to melt, and the metal gave off a low moan that echoed through the hall. Behind us, the facility lights dimmed again. One by one. Ramirez whispered, "Sir, maybe we should..." And then, with a final hiss, the door cracked open just enough to release a gust of air, colder than death itself. The smell that came out wasn't just dust or rust. It was old, ancient, like something that had been buried and forgotten for a reason. The captain looked into the darkness beyond, lifted his rifle and said, "All right, men. Let's see what the Cold War tried to hide." We stepped forward, and the door slammed shut behind us. The door sealed shut behind us with a sound that didn't echo. It thudded, like the air itself refused to carry it. For a moment, the only light came from our headlamps, cutting through a thick mist that clung to the walls. Dust particles floated like frozen ash. The air was heavy, metallic, and old. Too old. "Ramirez, check the air quality," the captain ordered. He flicked his sensor on, waited a few seconds, and frowned. "Oxygen's fine, sir, but there's something else. Trace compounds, chlorine, maybe ammonia." The captain nodded once, face unreadable. "Masks on. Safety first." We advanced slowly, boots crunching against a floor that looked like solid concrete, but felt soft in places, as if it had warped under the weight of time. Faded lines ran along the walls, yellow and black, Cold War warning stripes half buried under grime. Then we saw the markings. American, Russian, both languages stenciled across identical equipment crates. Ramirez muttered, "Joint operation? Here? That doesn't make sense." The captain didn't answer. He was staring at the floor, at the faint trail of footprints in the dust. Fresh ones. We followed them. The deeper we went, the narrower the tunnel became. A long, claustrophobic corridor that curved downward at a steady angle. Cables lined the ceiling, most of them long dead, but a few still hummed faintly with power. Every 50 meters or so, we'd pass another sealed door, all marked with numbers, 12, 13, 14, leading to what looked like small containment rooms. Each had a glass viewport covered from the inside. At door 15, I stopped. My light caught something scrawled on the glass. Words written backward from within, smeared in something brownish red. "Don't open again." The captain pulled me back. "Keep moving," he said quietly. But his voice had changed. He was no longer commanding. He sounded cautious, like he was beginning to understand this wasn't just an abandoned project. We reached the first junction. Two paths splitting like a forked vein. To the left, a tunnel caved in, crushed under decades of ice. To the right, a wider passage, lined with rusted pipes and flickering lamps that shouldn't have been working. The captain motioned right. Power means activity. That's where we go. As we walked, the humming grew louder. A low vibration you could feel through the soles of your boots. The kind of sound that wasn't just heard. It was felt in your teeth, in your ribs. Ramirez tapped his earpiece. Sir, getting interference again, like last night. It's Morse, I think. The captain stopped. Decode it. Ramirez listened, eyes darting behind his visor. After a few seconds, he said, It's repeating the same word over and over. Alive. We exchanged glances, no one speaking. Then something shifted in the shadows ahead. Hold position, the captain barked. We raised our rifles, beams locking on a figure standing in the distance, motionless, half hidden by the fog. Identify yourself. No answer. The figure didn't move. The captain advanced slowly, signaling us to flank. My pulse hammered in my ears. Every instinct screamed to turn back. When the light finally caught the figure's face, I exhaled sharply. It wasn't a person. It was a suit. An old American hazmat suit, still upright, frozen to the ground, as if someone had been standing there when the air froze around them. The visor was cracked, and behind it, a skull, mouth open, teeth blackened with frostbite. Ramirez whispered, Jesus. The captain crouched beside it, brushing off the shoulder patch. The name was almost gone, but we could make out the letters. L.T. Hawkins, 1973. That's impossible, the captain muttered. The base wasn't even commissioned until '74. Behind the frozen suit, we found a collapsed workstation, paper files melted into pulp, but the metal filing tag still legible. Joint Biocontainment Initiative, Operation Deep Frost. We pressed deeper. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber, bigger than the base above. Rows of empty cryogenic pods lined the walls, their glass lids shattered. Frost-covered pipes fed into a central console, still blinking faintly. Ramirez wiped a screen clear. Power's stable here. These systems are still active somehow. The captain looked at the pod nearest him. They were storing something down here. I leaned closer to the glass, brushing away frost. There was nothing inside, just a faint residue, black and tar-like, clinging to the corners. And then, beneath the hum of the machinery, I heard it. A slow, rhythmic tapping from somewhere inside the walls. Tap, 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 tap. We all froze. Could be thermal expansion, Ramirez said, trying to convince himself. But I knew that sound. It wasn't random. It had rhythm, intention. The captain turned toward the sound, rifle raised. Whatever's still alive down here, we're not alone with it. Then, without warning, the main console flickered, and a line of green text appeared across the old CRT screen. Containment breach, Sector C, 04:12 a.m. Ramirez checked his watch. It read 04:12 a.m. We stared at each other in silence. None of us had entered any sector. None of us had triggered anything. Sir, Ramirez whispered, voice trembling. It's tracking us. The lights along the corridor began to dim, one by one, toward the way we came. Something was moving behind those lights. Fast, scraping metal and echoing breaths carried through the tunnel. The captain barked, "Weapons ready!" I could see my breath fogging the visor, heart racing so fast I couldn't hear the hum anymore. And then, from the darkness, a single phrase echoed down the corridor, distorted through static, as if coming from an old intercom. You shouldn't have opened it. We fired toward the sound, the flash from our rifles lighting up the tunnel walls. Empty, nothing there, just echoes. Then the captain's radio came alive with static, and a different voice, low, broken, almost human, whispered through the channel. Sector C is not empty. We regrouped at the junction, breathing hard. The captain's orders were quick and quiet. Ramirez, map this level. Jones, get the samples from those pods. We need evidence this place exists before command buries it again. He turned to me. And keep that camera rolling. If we don't make it out, they'll need proof of what's down here. I nodded, hands shaking as I steadied the lens. In the distance, the tapping began again. This time, it wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from below the floor. The tapping beneath the floor didn't stop. It grew steadier, rhythmic, deliberate, like a signal. Each beat vibrated through the steel plates under our boots, soft at first, then heavier, as if something was striking from below. Ramirez crouched, pressing his ear against the ground. He flinched back almost immediately. "There's space down there," he said, "hollow, like another tunnel, or a chamber." The captain motioned for silence. The tapping had stopped, replaced by a faint pulsing hum. Not mechanical this time, organic. We followed the vibration to its source. A section of flooring warped and bulging upward, as if the metal had buckled from underneath. Jones pried open one of the loose plates, and a blast of freezing air shot up, stinking of rust and decay. Beneath it, a ladder. The captain shone his light down. "Looks like it goes at least 50 feet. Nobody said it out loud, but we all thought the same thing. Whatever was down there wasn't supposed to be reached again. We descended one by one. The air grew colder the farther we went, the ladder slick with frost. My gloves stuck to the rungs like glue. At the bottom, the space opened into a narrow shaft, lined with frozen pipes and corroded panels. The walls were covered in strange streaks, dark smears that looked too uneven to be paint. Our lights flickered as we regrouped. Ramirez checked his equipment. "Magnetic interference is off the charts. Something's generating a field down here." The captain looked around. "Then it's still active." We started moving again. The tunnel here was different, not built like the upper levels. The steel had been replaced by something older. Concrete mixed with ice, carved by hand, or maybe by machines that had long stopped working. Every step echoed. Every sound lingered too long, like the tunnel didn't want to let it go. At one point, Jones stopped. "Sir," he whispered, "you hearing that?" It was faint, almost drowned by the hum. A whispering, just beyond comprehension, like voices carried through frozen walls. Ramirez recorded it, played it back through his headset. His eyes widened. "It's English, I think. It's repeating the same sentence." The captain leaned in. "What's it saying?" Ramirez hesitated. "They didn't die down here." We reached the lower level after nearly 20 minutes of descent. The tunnel opened into a massive circular chamber, 30 meters across, maybe more. A metal catwalk encircled the space, leading to a control platform in the center. And below us, rows upon rows of sealed glass containers, half buried in ice, each filled with a thick, dark liquid. Tubes ran between them like veins. Some had cracked open, leaking onto the frozen floor, leaving black stains that shimmered in our lights. The captain's voice was steady, but low. "Biocontainment confirmed. Operation Deep Frost wasn't storage. It was a containment site." Ramirez checked one of the terminals along the catwalk. The old computer blinked to life, text scrolling in green across the black screen. Subject status, unstable. Cryo seal integrity, compromised. Manual override required. He frowned. Sir, the system's trying to stabilize something, actively. It's not just power, it's alive. The captain looked at him sharply. Alive what, Sergeant? Before he could answer, the chamber lights flickered. Once, twice, then blazed to full brightness. And that's when we saw the writing on the far wall, exposed under layers of ice. Experimental Reanimation Initiative. Joint Command, 1972. Reanimation, Jones muttered. As in, bringing something back? The captain's silence said everything. He moved toward the nearest containment tank, wiping frost from its surface. Behind the glass floated something pale, human-shaped, or close enough to pass for it. Limbs too long, eyes sealed shut, mouth sewn with wire. My stomach turned. They were experimenting on people. Ramirez's monitor began to beep. Sir, I'm getting thermal readings from that unit. It's at 37 degrees Celsius. Jones backed away. That's body temperature. Before he could finish, the glass cracked with a sharp snap. A hairline fracture spread across the surface, and from within, a trickle of dark fluid began to seep out. The captain shouted, "Fall back!" We stumbled toward the ladder, but the entire chamber shuddered. A deep, resonant groan like the base itself was waking up. Lights flickered again, cycling red, and an automated voice echoed from the speakers. Containment failure in progress. Sealing lower sectors. Doors along the walls slammed shut one by one, cutting off our exits. Ramirez yelled, "The ladder's sealing!" The captain cursed, sprinting toward the platform. Override controls, find them. We reached the console. The screen was flashing commands, faster than we could read. Lines of text scrolled, switching between English and Cyrillic. Ramirez typed furiously. "It's not responding. Something's rewriting the system." "Then pull the main cable," the captain shouted. He yanked a thick power cord from the console. Sparks flew, and for a brief moment, everything went black. Then, in the silence that followed, we heard it. A single, shallow inhale, followed by another, and then a wet, dragging sound from behind the glass. We turned our lights toward the cracked containment unit. The thing inside had moved. Its hand, gray, bloated and stiff, pressed against the fracture. The skin tore open as it pushed, black fluid spilling out like oil. Ramirez fired. The bullet hit the glass, shattering it completely. The body slumped forward, collapsing onto the floor in a splash of liquid and ice. We all stepped back. It didn't stay down. The captain barked, "Move!" The thing twitched, limbs bending at impossible angles, bones cracking as it struggled to stand. Its sewn mouth tore open with a sound that made my blood freeze. And from within, a breath escaped, raspy and wet. "Why? Did you wake us?" The chamber lights died. All that remained was the red glow from emergency strips and the hum that had followed us since the beginning. Louder now, pulsing in sync with whatever had just started breathing again. We ran for the ladder, but the path was blocked by fallen debris. The captain turned to me, eyes wide. "Camera, keep recording. They'll never believe this." I aimed the lens back at the tank, just in time to see another one crack. Then another, and another. Inside each, a figure began to stir. When the second tank cracked, the sound was different, louder, deeper, like thunder trapped inside a tomb. The glass burst outward, shards slicing through the air as something heavy hit the floor. We didn't wait to see what it was. "Fall back! Move!" the captain shouted. voice cutting through the chaos. But every direction we turned, more tanks began to shatter. One by one, lids blew off, spilling a flood of black fluid across the steel floor that steamed when it touched air. The hum that had haunted us since we arrived became a low roar now, vibrating through the metal under our boots. The captain fired a flare toward the main chamber ceiling, and in that brief burst of red light, we saw them. Dozens of shapes, tangled and human only in outline, moving in jerky, unnatural motions, as if they were relearning how to stand. Their skin was stretched, thin as wax paper, with veins glowing faintly blue beneath. No eyes, just sockets stitched shut. And yet they turned, all of them, toward the sound of our footsteps. Ramirez screamed, "Go! Go!" We sprinted for the ladder, boots slipping in the freezing sludge. The captain fired short bursts behind us, rounds echoing through the chamber, sparks flying off metal. One of the creatures lunged from the shadows, too fast, too strong, knocking Jones to the ground. He didn't even get to scream. The thing grabbed him by the neck and pulled him into the dark. The sound of bones snapping, followed by silence. Ramirez turned to go after him, but the captain grabbed his arm. "He's gone! We keep moving!" We reached the ladder, just as the emergency lights flickered back to life, now pulsing crimson. The automated voice returned, warped through static. Containment breach confirmed. Sector lockdown initiated. A steel bulkhead began sliding down from the ceiling, closing off the only exit. "Climb!" the captain yelled. We scrambled up the ladder as the creatures surged below us, clawing and screeching, their movements twitchy and violent. I felt one grab my boot, cold fingers like iron. I kicked hard, felt it slip, then heard it fall. Ramirez reached the top first, prying the hatch open. He and the captain pulled me through just as the bulkhead slammed shut beneath us, sealing the chamber again. The echo of pounding fists and guttural moans reverberated through the steel like trapped thunder. For a moment, we just lay there, panting, shaking, trying to believe we'd made it out. But the sound didn't stop. It changed. The pounding began to fade, replaced by something worse. A low vibration, like the creatures weren't just beneath us anymore. They were moving through the tunnels. We stumbled into the upper corridor, lights flickering wildly. The walls were sweating condensation, the temperature rising fast. Whatever they were altering the environment, or feeding off it. Ramirez was mumbling under his breath, trying to reach command on the radio. "This is Alpha Team, Section 12. We have a breach. Multiple entities, containment failure. Do you copy?" Static. He tried again, voice cracking, still static. Then, through the interference, a single, broken transmission came through. A voice we didn't recognize. "Seal it. All of it. No survivors." The line went dead. The captain's jaw tightened. "They knew," he said quietly. "They knew this could happen." We reached the operations room. The same chamber from earlier, now flickering with emergency red light. The welded door we'd cut through stood half open, the metal warped outward, like something had tried to force its way up. "Sir?" I said. "What if they're already—" A distant metallic shriek cut me off. It echoed from somewhere behind the door, a sound like steel being torn apart. The captain turned to Ramirez. "Power control. There. Cut the main feed to the tunnel levels." Ramirez sprinted to the console, typing rapidly. Almost there. The floor shook again, harder this time. A pipe burst near the ceiling, spraying steam across the room. From the darkness beyond the door, something slammed against the wall. Once, twice, then silence. "Ramirez!" the captain shouted, Done! He yanked the final lever down, and for a heartbeat everything went dark. The hum stopped. The vibration vanished. Even the air felt still. Then a loud hiss, and the emergency generator kicked in, restarting the base's life systems. Ramirez turned, eyes wide. It rebooted itself. The captain's face went pale. That means it's automated. It's keeping them alive. Suddenly, the security screens along the far wall flickered on. Dozens of grainy CCTV feeds blinked to life, all showing different parts of the base. Every hallway, every corridor, every sealed room, crawling with movement. The creatures were spreading fast, climbing walls, smashing through reinforced doors, pouring into the upper levels like a tide. One camera feed showed the communications array, the tower above ground, blinking faintly in the storm. Then, static. The captain exhaled slowly. They're cutting off our exit. I looked at him. Sir, what are your orders? He didn't answer at first. Then finally, we're going to the control core. If we can overload the reactor, we bury this place for good. We moved quickly through the corridors, following the emergency signage toward the reactor chamber. The power conduits hummed faintly beneath the floor, guiding us like veins of light. Every so often, the lights would flicker, and we'd hear movement behind the walls. Once, as we passed a sealed observation window, I saw a shape pressed against the glass from the other side. Pale face, sewn eyes, mouth moving soundlessly. Ramirez whispered, Sir, what are they? The captain didn't slow down. Leftovers from a war that never happened. We reached the final bulkhead, massive, circular, with a heavy manual wheel in the center. The label above it read, Reactor Core, authorized personnel only. The captain spun the wheel, muscles straining. The metal groaned, then gave way with a loud click. The door swung open, revealing a staircase spiraling downward into dim red light. Let's finish this, he said. We descended fast. The deeper we went, the hotter it got. The air smelled of ozone and decay. At the bottom, the reactor chamber stretched before us, a cavern of steel and light. The core pulsed rhythmically, bathing everything in a hellish red glow. The captain crossed to the control terminal. Ramirez set the overload sequence, 10-minute timer. 10 minutes? Sir, that's long enough to reach the surface. Just do it. Ramirez hesitated, then nodded and began typing. Suddenly, the overhead vents burst open. Something black and fluid poured through, splattering across the floor. It wasn't liquid. It moved. Figures began to emerge from it, dragging themselves upright. I lifted my rifle. Contact! We opened fire, bullets tearing through the darkness. But for every one that fell, another rose behind it. The captain shouted, Ramirez, now! Ramirez slammed the final key, and the reactor siren blared. Overload initiated, evacuation protocol, 5 minutes. The lights turned white hot, alarms screaming through the chamber. The captain turned toward us, shouting over the noise, To the surface, move! We ran. Behind us, the creatures howled, a sound that wasn't human, echoing up through the tunnels like the mountain itself was screaming. We reached the elevator shaft. The power flickered, controls dead. Ladder, the captain shouted. We climbed. The metal burned our hands, the heat from below rising fast. Halfway up, I looked down and froze. They were following, hundreds of them crawling up the walls, their limbs bending and twisting like shadows caught in motion. Ramirez's voice cracked. They're right behind us. The captain fired downward, muzzle flash lighting up the shaft. Keep climbing. We reached the top hatch, sealed. Ramirez tried to force it open, but the lock wouldn't budge. The captain drew his sidearm, and fired 3 rounds into the mechanism. The hatch blew open, daylight flooding in for the first time in hours. We pulled ourselves out into the storm. The wind roared across the frozen plain, snow slicing through the air. The base entrance loomed behind us, half buried, smoke rising from the vents. Ramirez looked back, breath ragged. "Sir, the blast. How big will it be?" The captain didn't answer. He just stared at the horizon, then at his watch. "Big enough," he said. Then he turned toward me. "If we don't make it, get that footage out. The world needs to know what we found." I nodded, clutching the camera against my chest. The ground trembled. The snow rippled like a living thing. And from deep beneath the earth, a light began to rise. White, blinding, swallowing the base whole. By the time we reached the upper level, the base was no longer quiet. Every wall, every pipe, every vent seemed alive with movement, shuddering under the echo of something crawling through them. The lights flickered between red and white, the alarm's pitch rising until it became a scream in metal. We sealed the bulkhead behind us, our breaths sharp clouds in the freezing air. The captain slammed the manual lock shut. "Ramirez, is comms still dead?" Ramirez shook his head. "No uplink. Signals jammed, but the interference, it's moving. It's not static." "What do you mean, moving?" I asked. He turned his monitor toward us. A small radar sweep flickered on screen, the interference pulsing across the base's schematic, like something alive, climbing toward the surface. Whatever was in those chambers, it's following the power grid. The captain's face hardened. "Then we cut it off. We cut everything." We made our way through the maintenance corridor, past rooms that looked like they'd been untouched for decades. Frozen desks, scattered files, coffee cups sealed in ice. The deeper we went, the stronger the vibration underfoot. At one point, a door burst open behind us with a loud clang. We spun around, weapons raised. Nothing, just the dark, and a trail of liquid stretching down the hall, like something had been dragged. Jones's voice trembled. "Sir, we can't fight that. We shouldn't even be here." The captain didn't slow. "We don't fight it. We bury it." We reached the generator room, a massive space of spinning turbines and frost-covered cables. The captain gestured toward the main control switch. "This cuts the core feed. No power, no containment field. Nothing moves up." Ramirez hesitated. "And if it's feeding off the grid, then we starve it." He nodded and pulled the lever. The lights dimmed instantly. The hum that had followed us since the tunnel began faded, dissolving into silence. For a moment, we all exhaled, but then came the sound. A low rumble, distant but rising. Not from the generators, from beneath them. The floor plates trembled, bolts shook loose and rolled across the concrete. "Move! Move!" the captain yelled. A section of the floor exploded upward, sending debris across the room. From the hole rose a shape, human-sized, but bent, stitched, the skin gray and wet. It clawed its way out with mechanical precision, eyes blind and mouth still wired shut. Jones screamed and opened fire. The bullets tore through it, but the thing didn't fall. It kept moving, not alive, not dead, just commanded. Another one followed, then another. Ramirez yelled, "There's no end to them." The captain grabbed his rifle, firing point blank into the ceiling sprinkler pipes. Ice shattered, flooding the room with freezing water. The lights burst, throwing the entire chamber into chaotic flashes of white and shadow. Through the strobe, I saw one of them grab Jones, its hand closing around his throat. Jones's scream was cut short. He vanished into the dark. The captain shouted, "To the elevator, now!" We sprinted through corridors now half flooded, alarms blaring distorted voices. Containment failure, surface breach imminent. Every door we passed slammed shut behind us, sealing with automatic locks. We reached the elevator bay, a tall shaft lined with flickering red lights. The captain hit the panel. Power's gone, manual crank now. Ramirez and I turned the wheel together, forcing the door open. Inside, the lift hung a few feet below, powerless. We jumped in. He began to crank the emergency lever, pulling us upward inch by inch. The sound below, hundreds of footsteps synchronized, climbing the shaft. The captain looked down. They're coming. I turned the camera toward him. Sir, if we don't make it... He cut me off. Keep recording. Someone has to know what they did here. We reached the top hatch. The moment it opened, daylight spilled through, weak, pale, but real. We stumbled out onto the surface, snow blowing in violent gusts. The mountains loomed, silent and cold. Ramirez collapsed in the snow, gasping. We made it. But the captain wasn't looking at the mountains. He was staring back at the base entrance, a steel door now vibrating under the sound of pounding fists from the other side. He turned to me, face pale. They won't stop. This base isn't built to hold them. It's built to contain the truth. What truth? I asked. He looked past me, toward the horizon. Those weren't Soviet experiments. They were ours. My chest tightened. Ours. He nodded. Project Deep Frost was a joint recovery operation. The Soviets weren't creating soldiers. They were cleaning up ours. Reanimation wasn't their invention. It was ours, from a black site that vanished in '45. I shook my head. You're saying these things? He cut me off again. They were American soldiers, lost in the ice after a failed test. Someone brought them here, tried to revive them, and it worked. Until it didn't. The pounding from below grew louder. The steel door bent outward. Ramirez screamed, "They're breaking through." The captain grabbed his radio. "If anyone receives this is Captain Elias Ward, Task Unit Frost 19. Operation compromised. Repeat, containment is gone. Recommend immediate." Static. The signal died. He looked at us, calm now, resigned. "Get the footage out. Don't stop recording, no matter what happens." He turned and ran toward the generator vents on the hill, the emergency fuel line. A moment later, he fired. The explosion lit the mountains like dawn. The shockwave knocked us into the snow. Fire rolled through the base entrance, swallowing everything. When I looked up, the entire site was collapsing. Towers sinking, steel folding, the ground swallowing its own history. Hours later, I found myself alone. Ramirez was gone. The snow was falling again, soft and endless, covering the ruins below. I turned the camera toward myself. My voice trembled. If anyone finds this... We didn't find a tunnel. We found a grave. And the dead don't want to be forgotten. I dropped the camera into the snow and started walking. Behind me, deep beneath the ice, the hum began again. Slow, rhythmic, alive. In the silence that followed Alaska's collapse, the war never ended. It simply went underground. Beneath the ice, beneath the lies, something still moves in the dark. The remnants of men who were never meant to return. Governments buried the reports, wiped the footage, erased the names. But truth leaves echoes, and the snow cannot bury what hums beneath it. The war that never was is not about battles fought. It's about what was hidden when the guns fell silent. And the war that continues, unseen, under our feet.